Hello, this is Doug from Homes Now Not Later. I have some shocking and disturbing news to report to all of you. The city of Bellingham will decide on Monday whether to shut down Unity Village or not. I just want to clarify that nothing major has happened at the village. Nobody's been hurt. Everybody's safe. Nobody's sick. The village continues to run extremely smoothly and is safe, happy, and a stable place during this difficult time of pandemic, mass unemployment, and increased evictions nationwide, and millions more that are at risk of losing their housing. I'm proud of the village. They've done an amazing job keeping their home at the highest standards of health and safety possible while making steady progress, getting cars, finding jobs, settling debts, saving money, getting physical, mental health in order. In other words, moving forward with their lives. So if that's the case, then why are we at risk of being shut down? In our weekly meeting with Bellingham Police Chief David Dahl, as well as Planning Director Rick Sepler, we were informed that we had violated one of the terms of our permit for the Unity Village site. The condition within our permit that we were not able to follow was a requirement to have a non-resident board member on site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This involved myself, Marcus, Lizzie, Carol, and other volunteers to have to sleep at the village and stay there all day, multiple days per week. Pre-COVID. After COVID-19 hit in March, we were advised by the city, as well as having our own internal policy, to minimize the risk to residents of the village by limiting the number of staff and volunteers who enter and leave the site to as small of a number as possible in order to minimize the risk of spreading the contagion. A spread of the contagion was still possible, but with fewer people coming and going, it would be a smaller chance. In fact, this policy was written into our emergency permit under a provision which stated, to protect the guests, volunteers, and public from increased exposure to COVID-19, no new guests, no new non-guest volunteers, new board members, or non-essential visitors shall be admitted to Unity Village until such time as the public health emergency has ended, or the Whatcom County Health Department lifts recommendations that limit group assembly. Homes Now shall implement and adhere to protocols to minimize as much as reasonably possible in-person interactions on and off-site. So with a pandemic setting in at that time, we had a few options. Option one, we either had to have a board member live on site and not be allowed to leave in order to limit the exposure of the virus, in order to follow the emergency COVID protocol, as well as the 24/7 non-resident board member requirement. If we needed to go to the grocery store or something, we would have to call a second person to do that. Option number two, we follow the COVID protocol as best as we can in a reasonable way and rely on leaders within the village to act as designated resident managers, similar to an apartment or a dorm situation, thus violating the 24/7 non-resident board member requirement in the process. Or number three, we violate the emergency COVID protocol in order to reasonably comply with the 24/7 non-resident board member requirement by letting an unnecessary number of people into the site on a regular basis, thus increasing the risk of virus spread. Out of these options, we chose the safest option, the option which would provide the highest amount of protection possible from contagion, with as few visitors and staff as possible acting as variables. The option which would also allow for self-empowerment and personal responsibility. We chose to limit the number of staff and volunteers going to the site to just one, me. We chose to rely on leaders within the village to act as designated resident managers. I would still come to the village daily to empty gray water, perform maintenance tasks, and bring supplies to the village, but I only went to the grocery store and my own home. Other than that, I followed the governor's orders to stay at home. In order for me to comply with the governor's order to stay at home, it would have required me to be non-compliant with the 24/7 non-resident board member requirement at Unity Village. 24/7 means 24/7 though, which means that even the on-site board member was not technically allowed to go to the grocery store right up the street because it would have left the site unsupervised for a brief period of time. Even a few minutes was not allowed. This provision has always been extremely unreasonable, counterproductive, unnecessary, and difficult to deal with. But we did it because we didn't want the city to shut down the village and throw 18 people on the streets. The policy is classist because it assumes that people of lower income can't be trusted to manage or supervise a site like any other normal person. Before COVID hit in March, we were in compliance with this provision, even though it was difficult. When you have to spend 2 or 3 days a week at a place that's not your home, where you're not allowed to leave, it causes burnout and a feeling of being trapped there. In turn, that hinders your job performance and attentiveness to the needs of residents, especially if they need something on one of your days off. The policy is counterproductive and it hinders the progress of the villagers. The city thinks that we're asking for forgiveness. We're not. We didn't do anything wrong, so there's nothing to forgive. Everything has been running smoothly and nobody's been hurt. We're asking the city to make a simple change to their permit so that we can come into compliance. I suggest they allow for on-site resident managers or allow for designated residents to become board members. Either solution would work and is already working. Coming into compliance on the terms as they are currently written is unreasonable, both in terms of health and public safety, as well as reducing the independence and hindering the progress of the people living there. We don't want to go backwards. This has been working well for a little less than half a year now. Focus on the results. Don't shut down a working model over one line on a piece of paper. Make it work. If there's a specific safety concern that the city would like to mention about Unity Village, I'm listening. But if there's no safety concern, then why is this such a big deal? All I cared about was that the village was stable, safe, and running smoothly, and it has been working, and that's what's important to me. We have been running the village this way since March 23rd, when the governor ordered non-essential staff to stay at home and limit travel. Homes Now is an all-volunteer organization, and none of our staff is essential to assure safe operations on the site. All volunteers and staff maintain daily connections with the residents digitally. The staff and residents have access to a security camera system of 16 HD cameras, and it helps them to keep the village safe and well monitored. I have it on my screen daily. All of us at Homes Now are always in close communication with the village, and there's a high level of trust between residents, staff, and volunteers. Homes Now is an all-volunteer organization, and we have no paid staff. We don't do this to line our pockets, make money on homelessness, or collect a paycheck. We do this work because we want to help people and provide housing in a cost-effective, self-sufficient, self-empowering way so that people don't have to go to sleep on the concrete or have to get caught in a constant limbo at an emergency shelter day to day and can finally get on with their lives. However, it's not like it's the Wild West or anything. We have designated leaders within the village who act in a staff capacity in accordance with the provisions we have to follow, and they are reasonable, but just the specific idea that it has to be a board member and not a resident is unreasonable. We have Tina Hayes, the mayor of the village, and a resident manager. David Morse is the deputy mayor and also a resident manager. Either one of them is at the village at all times. If Tina isn't there, Dave is there. If Dave isn't there, Tina is there. The structure has worked very well, and it gets better every day. I'd also like to add that in the 1 year's time that Unity Village has been in operation, we have not had a single police call or major incident, including the nearly 6 months of time that we were not following the 24/7 non-resident board member policy. We've proven that it works, even though one line on a piece of paper says it's not allowed, and that will be shut down. And doing so and following that piece of paper to the letter was a worse result in this case. So we did what we thought would produce the best result. And yeah, it was a risk to do so, but we had confidence that we could do it, and we have had help from other experienced shelter operators in order to do this in a responsible way that works. Nick Lewis, a board member of Homes Now, a sitting Lummi council member, and director of Lummi Stepping Stones, a sheltering agency for families which operates 2 shelters on Lummi Nation, has been a valuable advisor and asset in terms of providing a template for a successful model of sheltering that has inspired multiple elements within our organization. Lummi Stepping Stones does not have non-resident staff members on site 24/7 either. He explained to us that they tried that at first, and it worked better when they managed their own home. I asked Nick if he'd be willing to do an interview about this subject and describe the successful policy they use. He said yes. Here's the video.
But
First question. What is Lummi Stepping Stones?
so Lummi Stepping Stones was created in 2016 to help address homelessness or people affected by housing insecurity in the Lummi community for a tribal population. So we're a nonprofit that we have 2 houses today, on average 30 people any given day. It's community living. The home self-managed, so we have a on-site manager for each, a resident manager that lives at each home, and if there's anything that comes up, they will let us know and we'll go address it. So it's 2 community homes that are really self-ran.
Yeah, it's the same for us too. We go down there right away if something's really needed and we're on it. But yeah, I don't sleep every night there or anything.
So when we did first start, we did stay on site 24 hours, and that was just because it was new. But once you get people there and they know how things work, you have a manager, a resident manager that's been there for a while. We don't need to babysit adults.
Right.
You know, the people that do struggle, they work themselves out of the house quick. So.
Yep, we've experienced the same thing too.
Yeah.
How are the shelters or homes managed?
We have a house manager. Claire James is the primary one. She runs the homes on her own, being a resident there. She's done an amazing job. It's not easy in community living, but what we've seen is the homes work. You create a family unit there. What we've seen is you might have people that come in that don't have a support or don't have family that can help them, and they really created their own support network, and they help each other out.
Oh, that's awesome. So another question I have is what has been the results? What have been the results of doing it this way? Like finding people housing and stuff.
We've had a lot of people be able to move out and get their own housing. Some down in Skagit County, some in the county, some through Lummi Housing, Tribal Housing. But what we've seen is you'll have in any community living or homeless housing, you're going to have a struggle. You're going to have somebody that's not there for the right reasons. That's bound, no matter how strict of a program you have. But we've seen a lot more success come through Lummi Stepping Stones than what we have in many other areas. We've had newborns come into the home, families that just needed a chance, and with the help of Lummi Stepping Stone, they were able to get their own house by just doing the program.
Nice. So from what you've seen based on your own successful sheltering model, as well as being part of Homes Now, in your opinion, do you think that Homes Now needs a board member on site at Unity Village 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? I know our permit says we have to, but just if that wasn't an issue, do you think that we would require that?
From what I've seen in Unity Village, it is very, it is managed good. It's better than some of the other things that I've seen. At times, I feel like it runs smoother than our own nonprofit with Lummi Stepping Stones. You guys created a family there, and everybody's supportive. Everybody's bought in and contributes. Everybody there just wants the chance to be able to get on their feet, and everything that I've experienced with Unity Village and what Homes Now is doing and the people that they help, it's working.
Yeah, I think
it's worked for people that it didn't work elsewhere. And I think that's one of the things that's unique about what we're trying to do through both Homes Now and Lummi Stepping Stones is it's a different approach. Many of the people that come through our nonprofits may have burnt a bridge in other places, and it's part of recovery. It's part of a journey that they've been on, but that past doesn't define their future.
Right.
And you guys really created a place that they can get on their feet, and that's what we need to support.
Yeah, we're just trying to create more options and get people housed and get people moving on with their lives. And we're not saying that our model is everyone's solution either. We're just saying, like, hey, we have an option here that was not available before. The system might have 12 options. Here's a 13th option, right? That's basically how. And
that's I think what both of the nonprofits are really doing. We can't serve everybody.
Correct.
NAR can homes now. But there's a small population that works for. People can't go into places like the Lighthouse Mission or even living with roommates. They really just need a small place that they can have their own independence.
Yeah.
And it works for them.
Yep. Most of our residents are very independent, and that's important to them. Well, those were all the questions I have, except one more. Is there anything you want to say to the general public about this?
Just from everything that Homes Now has done, take the time to come down and visit. Go and look. The door is always open to sit and talk with people. I know the board of directors and the people that help lead things always have an open door policy. Come and visit the residents. I know they've always talked about, hey, come see who we are. Know that we're a person, not just a piece of the front page news that people see when it comes to homelessness. We're all good people. They're great people.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm going to upload this video soon. I think every resident spoke in it. So I wanted to basically, because I like what you were saying, instead of on the news, it's I want the public to see the village, right? So and see the residents and hear from them and so that the idea that they need a babysitter is absurd.
There are places that do need babysitters.
I know that.
Places like the drop-in center, where you're really taking people that might be under the influence or have some severe mental, that place does. But a place like Unity Village, you guys screen people, you guys interview people, you guys take a whole different approach, and the residents help decide.
Yes.
You're creating that family culture, and that's not what other places do.
Right. And one thing that a lot of residents have mentioned is that they had an opportunity to make friends and family, like with other people in that community, and that sometimes they said that it's sometimes more supportive than their actual family somewhere else or something like that. And so.
Yep, that's 100% true. I've seen that with Lummi Stepping Stones, and I think it's just something in this area of work around homelessness. It's the stigma that people see on the news,
right?
What they see on the front page of the papers, and acknowledging that that's a part of homelessness, but that's not all of it.
Right.
People need to understand the data and who's really affected.
Right. They need to see, and that's why if they see people directly, they're like, oh, this isn't what I thought homelessness was. Right. That's what I want people to see. But anyway, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it, and I'll send you the link when it's done.
Good. Here to help, Doug. I'm proud of you guys, each and every one of you.
Well, thanks. We're proud of you too, man. We're glad to have you working with us. So anyway, take it easy. Good luck.
Take it easy, bud. Yeah. Have a good day.
Yep. You too.
It also wasn't a secret that we were violating the non-resident board member policy. I'm surprised it was only brought up now, because we've had multiple meetings with Chief Dahl and Planning Director Rick Sepler where we had an understanding that maintaining full staff was going to be an issue with COVID and stay-at-home orders. But I guess things have changed overnight for some reason. I have mentioned it at multiple city council meetings that the village was largely self-governing, and we were just there to support them. Marcus even mentioned it at the Homeless Strategies Work Group meeting on May 29th, while the planning director was present in the meeting. We thought that we had some more leeway on this because of the COVID-19 situation and wanting to maintain as little unnecessary contact as possible.
Here's the video from May 29th.
Marcus.
Yes. Okay. So I would just also like to address that we're talking about the money it takes to run several different facilities, and I appreciate Councilor Lilliquist's remarks on that. I think that we don't have to run it the same as we've run things classically. Currently, during this particular crisis, we have isolated Unity Village to the point where we're virtually running it from the outside. This is something that we proposed to both city and county councils from the beginning. And when the city allowed us to start our encampments, we kind of had to put training wheels on, take baby steps up to every part of what we wanted to do. Starting with the tent encampment, and then we started to be able to build, and we still are operating from a kitchen tent instead of a services building, which is our original goal in that. But one of our goals also is to identify leaders within the group. Say you have 20 people, identify a leader or two within them, and a small council within the group that confers together and does their own problem solving within the group with very little input from us. At this point, yes, we were there a lot. A staff member was always on site. The city required it from us. However, we don't require it, and it doesn't seem to be needed. The model we copied down in Seattle didn't need it and was operating fine. There was other things that went wrong with that camp. Seattle was part of the problem, but so it should be interesting to see if we cannot do better with the same type of model. And I again would posit that you just don't need the amount of intensive management that you think. A small cadre of social workers going from camp to camp and meeting with people and meeting the needs of camps and workers doing a circuit of that, I think is again the stability that you give to people. The people are getting, they are able to lock their doors and have their own security, go get a job, go apply for jobs. We bring them services like help them get their license, help them get all their paperwork in order, help them apply for apartments and everything. So we could be doing that on that level as a government by this winter, and I think it's a worthy goal. We have a real problem, and I want to fix it, and I think we can. I honestly think we can. Thank you.
Other ideas?
Councilmember Hamel has his hand raised.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Thanks, Barry. Appreciate it. I'm kind of getting tired of listening to the same conversation over and over again about homes now, or a tiny village being the solution for everything that we have. It simply is not scalable. It doesn't work for people who cannot remain sober. It doesn't work for domestic violence people who are fleeing their abusers. It doesn't work for unaccompanied youth. There's so many reasons that it doesn't work for the general population. While it's great that it works for 18 people, that's awesome. We've got probably 1,000 people that are experiencing homelessness in Whatcom County. But to trot out this idea that this is going to be the end-all be-all solution is simply not practical. The reason that organization exists is because it's over-leveraged on free stuff. It gets free volunteers. It gets free land that the city has donated to that organization. It gets free products that, or to some degree, that I know that there's been, they paid to build some of the houses, but the food deliveries and all that stuff, it's over-leveraged on free materials. And to me, that's not a sustainable model. I don't care if it's a low-cost option. That's not really that doesn't factor into my thinking. What factors into my thinking is how do we deal with folks and make sure that they get the care and the treatment that they need and the stability, so they can then gain housing and be long-term housed. That's the solution that we're talking about. That's the COVID solution that we're supposed to be talking about here. And I'd like to make sure that that's what we're focused on. And also like to let staff do their own work, and for bloviating politicians like myself to stay out of it. Thanks.
This was on the record, and nobody in the meeting seemed to have an issue with it. The remarks from City Council member Dan Hamel in the meeting is also the response we sometimes get from the city. Sometimes it's hard to work with the city because we're just trying to house people and help, and we are often treated as a burden or an adversary, and always under a microscope. We just want to be partners and work together and house people. Like, that's all. I did not ask for permission on this policy because I knew that it would be next to impossible to fulfill under these conditions.
and that the answer would likely be no, and that it says we will be shut down if we can't fulfill it. So I was afraid that by asking, we would have the risk of getting shut down if they knew we couldn't fulfill that provision. I take full responsibility for anything that happens at the village, whether I'm on site or not, 24/7. With the governor's orders, direct evidence of stable daily operations, minimization of contagion spread through keeping the number of staff to a minimum on site, and continued progress for the villagers, changing this permit requirement should be a no-brainer. We want to come into compliance, but with a more reasonable policy to come into compliance with in the right way, in the best interest of health and safety of the residents. We can do this, guys. Let's not play games with people's lives. Let's not discriminate against people just because they're homeless. Just because the planning director believes that villages can't manage themselves, which he stated at the last homeless strategies work group meeting, does not mean that it's the reality. Bellingham Municipal Code 20.15.020, Section N, states that on-site supervision must be provided at all times. We know that. We do have on-site supervision, our resident managers. Other sheltering agencies in town are able to do this. Why can't we? The code does not specify that the supervision has to be a non-resident board member. That's a stricter provision attached to our specific permit. I find it kind of ironic that with 0 police calls, we might be shut down because we didn't have a board member on site 24/7 as a babysitter for people without shelter. But the city and the police don't seem to have any supervision when their policies and their actions have the potential to literally put people's lives in danger, as is the case with the homeless camp cleanups. We are still waiting to hear back about the policy around camp cleanups and the explanation for why the officers don't have the policy in the field, and the problem of the determination of cleanups happening or not going through one person to decide. I find the timing of this response from the city kind of odd, given that in the last few weeks, Marcus has been causing a fuss about this, and now suddenly they find something on us to have an issue with. We know that it's a difficult job to administrate and police an entire city. All we're asking for is for you to let us help people without unnecessary interference. We're doing a good job under difficult conditions, and that should be enough, and we don't deserve to get shut down for keeping our residents safe. The family of Lummi Stepping Stones don't need a babysitter. The residents of Unity Village don't need a babysitter, and our organization doesn't need a babysitter either. We're all adults here. This policy makes the implication that residents are untrustworthy. Also, when any resident finds permanent housing, they won't have a babysitter either. Having our model work this way lines up more with the expectations of having your own place after transitioning out of the village into permanent housing. Let's make progress and solve problems and move forward. Trust us as an organization to not be total failures and exercising discretion in terms of how we operate Unity Village. We've proven that we're not causing any issues, and we're operating in a stable way and getting people into housing with few, if any, problems. We can all win here, right? I hope so. Have a great night, everybody. I will know more on Monday. Wish us the best of luck. Thanks.